Welcome to Biblonia 2025. I'm Michael Light, and if you're a Second Temple Jewish literature junkie, big-time Bible nerd, or anywhere on the path to be one, like me, then Biblonia is the place for you. Here, we explore all types of odd ancient texts, such as the Apocrypha, the Pseudepigrapha, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and more. So, with scholars, sages, and the scriptures, let's Bible on. Personally, this year has been big for me. I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Biblical Studies. I finished reading through the Bible for the 10th time. I finished reading through the last of the prominent Second Temple Jewish texts, and I made indices for them all, which, by the way, together all my indices for the Second Temple Jewish literature together comprise the most extensive biblical index for Second Temple Jewish texts. I know I myself use them a lot throughout my Bible college experience to write much better papers. But this last year has also been a big year for the Biblonian Podcast. I saw an increase by 25% in listeners, 73% more plays, 40% more followers. I introduced this podcast to YouTube and YouTube Music. So if you listen to your podcasts on YouTube Music, by the way, you can go right ahead and find my podcast right there. And I finished this series going through the Old Testament Apocrypha that I had begun all the way at the end of 2023, which, by the way, makes the Biblonian Podcast the one podcast that has a season with an episode dedicated especially to each and every single one of the Apocrypha. What's interesting is that I began to start or make significant progress in all of these 4 years ago. So, for example, if you look at the launch date of my first Biblonian podcast episodes, it's October 2021. At that time, I had just finished my first year in Bible college. I had also just finished reading through the Bible for the second time, and I had just begun my journey of reading through Second Temple literature and becoming a total junkie. I remember that I had just finished the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then later that year, I would read the Pseudepigrapha, and then after that, it was Philo of Alexandria, then the Old Testament Apocrypha, then Flavius Josephus, and even the Apostolic Fathers. And I made indices for all of these and notes. So that's the past year, the past couple of years. That's been big. But 2025 is going to be even bigger. Perhaps you noticed that this is my first video podcast. Well, turns out that this year I will be moving over to video podcasts. So if you're a video podcast fan, then you can watch it here on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you stream your podcasts. Or maybe you noticed the new intro beat or the new icon for the podcast. I have made cosmetic changes to the podcast all around as well, and I hope that you like them. Maybe you paid attention to the beginning intro and saw that now there's 2 hosts mentioned in the bottom corner. And that is because I will in fact have a co-host joining me, starting with the next season of the Biblonian Podcast. And one other thing, you may have noticed that throughout this podcast episode, I've been referring to what I usually call just the Apocrypha, the Old Testament Apocrypha. And if you guessed it, you're right. It's because this next season we'll be going through the New Testament Apocrypha. I am especially pumped and psyched to see what I'll be reading through for the first time, a text that I'm pretty unfamiliar with in quite a bunch of different ways, and to be going through it with my co-host and all of you. This next season, by far, is going to be the biggest, longest season in the most high-quality format in all ways that I've ever done. And I'm so excited for y'all to experience it with me. All in all, this past year, these past years together have all been really giant. But this next year is going to be even bigger. So I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts. If you have any questions, also feel free to leave those. If you're on Spotify, there should be a section that asks you a question on what you thought about this episode. Or if it's YouTube, you can leave a comment and I'll read. If I can, I'll respond and I'll take it into consideration. I'd love to hear your thoughts. With all of that, I can't wait for the coming year. But until then, Bible on.